Hey, it's Mirna from Trainer's Toolbox. Welcome to the Trainer's Toolbox podcast, a place where you can discover practical and effective tools and tips to make your workshops more insightful, engaging, and memorable. You are at the right place if you're looking to become the best trainer you can be and design truly impactful learning experiences. Ready? Let's dive in. If you're keeping an eye on Trainer's Toolbox work and podcast for a while already, I hope you already know that I love talking with other trainers about emotions. Emotions in workshops and how do they actually influence the learning journeys. How can we use emotions to deepen learning journey, to make it more engaging, to make it more memorable, more impactful in a way. And I spoke about this already in episode number 14. We will link it at the end of this one, also if you want to check it out, more for like basics and overlook of how can we work with emotional journeys. I also work with it to depth with other trainers in emotional journey design, which is a short online course in which we explore different shades of working with emotions. And in all of these, we cover many aspects. But today, I really want to go into one very specific aspect of emotions and their role in learning that I would say is the biggest trap that can trick us as trainers if we're not aware of it. And that is how emotions that we bring into the room in ourselves actually influence the learning and the room. And here are two things you need to know, and then I'll explore three things we can do about it, right? But first, two things you need to know why this is a trap and why do we need to be very aware of this. Number one, emotions are really, really contagious. Us as humans, we are wired to mirror each other in emotions, to connect with, especially when we connect with each other and when we are in rapport, to take over emotions of others. Just think of that. Imagine if you're walking in a space in the city, maybe in some street, and everybody suddenly starts running and looks like panicking. You would pick up that emotion physically, wanting or not. You wouldn't know what they're running from, but you would pick up that anxiety, that fear. Or if you see people who are really angry and fighting, it's really easy to pick up that emotion. So we as humans are quite wired to, in general, to pick up emotions from others, and emotions are quite contagious. That means also participants in our training room bring some. That's something we also talk about within emotional journey design. But it also means what we bring in as a trainer is very important. Now, the second thing you need to know is why our emotion as a trainer is even more impactful than the emotions of others in the room. Because emotion that it gets contagious and transferred has certain rules. Think if we are two people and we're in an interaction and emotion is contagious and I'm really happy and joyful and you're sad. Which one gets transferred? Or one of us is really angry and the other one is really calm. Which one gets transferred? Think for a second. The main rule of what makes emotions transferable, apart also from us being in contact, the main rule is the expressiveness. The emotion that is more expressive will be more likely to be transferred to the other person. But there are other rules or guidelines. There is also the fact that if somebody is more in the spotlight, their emotion gets transferred more. Think speaker on a TED stage. They will transfer much more emotion to their audience than the other way around. Or also think authority role. If somebody shows up in the room who is in somehow higher in hierarchy or in some sort of role of authority, it's more likely that their emotion will get transferred to others in that room. So as a trainer or facilitator, we naturally get a role that's more in the spotlight, that comes with a bit of authority, even if that authority is more to hold the space than the authority of expert, or sometimes it is the authority of expert. But in each case, we come with that authority, we come with that spotlight, and often we are expressive because we are, working on our communication a lot. And that means, because of these reasons, that our emotion gets transferred more into the room and maybe in more ways than we are aware of. So one thing we really want to build is awareness. Where does that emotion leak? How does that emotion get transferred? And I want to share with you three things where I would like to invite you to observe this a little bit more and to just reflect a little bit. How can you shape your emotion that it actually benefits the learning, not the other way around? And the first thing you really want to be aware of is just how much your own work on your emotional state in your life in general influences what you bring into the room. I'm sure you're aware of this already. I just want to give you maybe a bit of different angle on self-development that also means working a lot on both our emotional regulation, but also on our emotional baseline. To feel to a certain level grounded, to be fairly calm, to nourish the positive feelings such as gratitude, curiosity, like positive emotions toward others. And this is really good moment to really take a moment to reflect. Feel free to pause the video and to think, how am I nourishing this in my life? How am I building the foundation and the baseline that I'm grounded and calm and also maybe energetic and grateful and curious and whatever else you would like to be because you think it would be good for your learners? How am I really actively nourishing that in my life out of my training work and out of my work only? And you can tap into many resources there, from breath work to sports, to meditation, to journaling, and also just to some habits right before the workshop, to taking time to own the space and to set the space and settle in the space and get grounded. So this can also be habits that we do right before the workshop to be in a positive state. But this is really down to also how are we emotionally as a person? What is our baseline? Because we all have certain baseline of how we feel often and what are our go-to emotions. And also how much can we regulate any unexpected events or states that happen. I had some really tricky situations right before the workshops. And I think, well, for all of us, we show up in the workshop also sometimes when we are maybe tired or maybe when we don't feel at our best. So there is always a question also of regulation as much as nourishing the right baseline. Now, that's the one that's just building that in our life in general. The second one, that maybe it's the biggest trap within this list of traps, it's just becoming more aware of when our negative states might be seeping in to our training room. And I could see this very clearly, especially at the beginning of COVID times, when I worked with a lot of trainers to pick up more of their virtual skills, because I was working in virtual world for a long time already, and for many trainers it was a bit of a shock to start to pick this up and move their trainings online. So I worked a lot with different groups to help them do that. And I could see just how much negative emotions and anxiety they have around the technology itself. And it was really important to learn not just to use the technology, but to manage that, to manage our own state, not to have that anxiety seeping in. And this can, of course, be just because you have a certain goal and agenda you need to deliver. You have a certain room of unknown people who you need to work with. It's normal to have a bit of just nerves, and as we are approaching this situation that's so close to public speaking and being in the spotlight and having big responsibility in our workshop. So it is really important to be very aware how that mini anxiety or excitement, whichever flavor it is for you, shows up for us, and how much is it maybe seeping into our training room. Can we really control it? Can we find ways to regulate it or to make sure that it doesn't, get into the training room? Very similar can also be when we are tired or low on the energy, because very often it will be very helpful for the group if the trainer can maintain high energy and help with the energy. And often we will complain if we have a long workshop, that's maybe a full day, how our trainees will have this afternoon dip after lunch, or if we have a evening online workshop, how it's hard for them to maintain their energy. But we are the ones guiding their energy. So what really matters here also, what level of energy and tiredness do I show up with? Because that does hold the space for the rest of the group. I would say for this, one of the best practices we can all do more is a practice of self-check-in. It's an amazing practice. I talked about it quite broadly in the podcast number 19, so you might want to check that one out. It's a practice that we can develop into quite elaborate thing, but it can also be used in its very much micro version. So I want to encourage you to check it out and to just start looking into more of that awareness. And if you ever need this quick shortcut to self-regulation, if you're like, Okay, Mirna, but the fact is I am nervous before my workshop, or I am tired on that day, so I can't fake it for 8 hours. I want to invite you to really use breath as one of your main tools. Just taking slow, deep breaths, paying attention to how you breathe to maintain, the minimum of your energy when needed and to protect yourself from this trap. Now, the third thing, I hope you're curious about this one. The third thing is we can also use our energy and the fact that it's contagious and our emotion and the fact that it's contagious in intentional way by thinking, how would I want them to feel? How do I want my group to feel? And then ensuring that we step into that emotion or energy first. I'll give you an idea. Often trainers will say, how do you want your participants to feel? I want them to be really, really engaged. But I'm doing this workshop for the 50th time and it's a routine. But I want them to be really engaged. Or maybe trainer will say, I want them to be really open and curious. But I know exactly how this will go and I'm ready to follow the plan. But I want them to be really open and curious. So notice discrepancy there between how much you're stepping away in your role from the emotion you want the room to feel. And think a little bit. Is there a space to actually build that in a way that you embody it more, that you embody that desired feeling more? If you want to have dynamic, energetic workshop, it's your own energy and dynamism you need to work on first. If you want to have very calm, grounded, not tense conversation, you need to own that space first. If you want them to be curious and open, lead, walk the talk, lead the way. If you want them to be more critical thinker, skeptical thinker, again, you need to lead the way. So really think, how do I want them to be? To be very fair, there is much more you need to do than just you embodying that feeling, but you embodying that feeling is a really good start in having them bring in or evoke in themselves the emotion that you want them to have. Now, a few more things you can do is to also work with your body to a little bit get more in that state. Like if you need to be more energetic, maybe to do something a bit more active before the workshop. If you need to be more calm, maybe to do more again of slow breaths. Also to work maybe with journaling before the session and just exploring that in different ways. Now, this is 3 things I named that you can really work with in your own emotion that will hugely influence your training room. 1, to work on your own emotional states in life in general. 2nd, to be aware of your negative states and how are they maybe sometimes seeping into your workshop. And 3rd, to think more intentionally, how do you want them to feel and how will I also bring that emotion in myself? I do want to invite you now for that moment to reflect which of these 3 is a priority for you. Which of these 3 would you like to pay a bit more attention to, work with it a bit more? If you need more practical tips for any of them, let me know. Best way to reach me is on LinkedIn or by replying to any of Trainers Toolbox newsletters. You can find the links to both in the description of this episode. I would be happy to explore some of these topics to more depth. So feel free to let me know which one would be most interesting or what are your questions. And if you really want to own the emotional journey of your participant, build much more of your impact in terms of learning by strengthening those emotional journeys, definitely check out the course on emotional journey design. I deliver it twice per year, once in autumn, once in spring. It's a short online course, but it gives you a whole new perspective and many very practical tools to build those journeys. Do remember, if this episode was useful to you or any of its aspect, please like it, subscribe to the channel, spread the word about the podcast, because I hope it reaches more trainers and facilitators who can benefit from it. Wish you an amazing day ahead. Thank you for exploring this topic with me. I hope you found some exciting ideas and valuable tools that you will use already today. Remember, they only work if you put them in practice, but then they make all the difference. If you enjoy Trainers Toolbox podcast, do leave a rating and review. It does mean a lot. And if you haven't done it yet, click on the links in the episode descriptions and discover free materials and valuable resources to dive in deeper. See you in the next episode or at Trainers Toolbox newsletter.